You probably know who Frank Ocean is. Thank you so much, YouTube algorithm. Frank's career can be best described as an enigma. In a world where mainstream artists have to do the most to still be in the cultural zeitgeist, Frank Ocean has been able to cement his place in music culture with seemingly doing very little. To paint you a holistic picture of Frank Ocean's career thus far, he has 2 studio albums that are publicly available, 1 video album that technically you can't really listen to in a standard format, and 1 mixtape. Add that on to a handful of singles, and for a 15-year-long career, that is not a lot at all. So this had me thinking, can you achieve unparalleled levels of success without losing your aura? Can it be that if you just make good music, people will listen? Well, Blonde is officially a decade old this year, and a decade ago, I started off my music journey, and I thought, yeah, that's the case. Was I right? To start out this conversation, I think we should talk about something that's very useless that everyone really cares about, which is aura. Frank Ocean has a lot of aura. How does he maintain this aura? It's through his mystique. I think every artist, including me, has gone through this feeling of, if I post about my music constantly, then every time I do and it doesn't get motion, I lose all my aura. Not wanting to lose your swagger has left a lot of people to not even pursue their music career. And although I'm like half kidding, it does have a really big impact. Look at Frank Ocean's career compared to other R&B artists. He is seen very high for, again, the little amount of output that he's had. Compare him to The Weeknd or a Daniel Caesar. The Weeknd and Daniel Caesar have continuously been putting out new bodies of work, and so the fans' expectations are met with the supply of new music. But when you're a Frank Ocean fan, then you have no idea what his new music would sound like. The scarcity creates a mystique around him, and the mystique creates a perfection that we associate with Frank Ocean that might not even be fair. I'll pull an example. When I was a little kid, I found a steal on this Lego Quinjet set. Now, the Walmart was very far away, so we drove an hour and a half to get back home, and throughout that entire car ride back, I was looking at the box and I was dying to open it. I was looking at every single detail on the box. I was even analyzing the cardstock that they were using. The illustration that they had on the front of the box was so perfect at capturing my attention, and my imagination of what would be in that box led me to think that this piece of plastic could damn near fly. I got home, started building the set, had an amazing time building the set, and it ended up being a really great set. But it was underwhelming. Not because the set was bad in any way, but because my head had the bar of what that set could have been up here. When there's less to judge, the mind fills in the blanks. Now, why do I give so much of a shit about aura? Well, this illusion doesn't just change how we see these artists, it also changes how we see ourselves. My relationship with Frank's discography was one of great admiration and then one of being very pissed off at Frank Ocean. My admiration is obvious. I literally have Blonde on my wall right there. It was a pivotal album in my development, yada, 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 yada. But then I got really pissed off at Frank Ocean because the bar he set seemed almost impossible to reach. What do you mean? You released your first ever mixtape, suddenly Beyonce hears about it. Next thing you know, Jay-Z and Kanye hear about it. Next thing you know, you're getting flown out to LA to work on Watch the Throne? What the hell? My understanding of Frank Ocean when I was young and naive was that when he went out on the pitch to swing, he got a home run and he couldn't stop getting home runs. And then in my mind, when I was going to go up next on the pitch, if I didn't swing a home run, then it wasn't even worth stepping on the grass. This stress that I had of chasing perfection really made making music something that should have been enjoyable, just something that was very anxiety inducing. My first project, Running Man, when I made my song Lavender, that song took me, I'd say, a year to make. I'd made the beat in like a week, but then I would just hum rhyme schemes, and then I would rewrite, and then I would write, and then rewrite, and then write, and then rewrite, and then write, and then rewrite, and then I try recording, and no one's used to hearing their voice being played back at them. There's some scientific reason as to why it doesn't sound the same when you're talking out loud versus when it's on a playback on a monitor, but that song in totality probably took me 250 different takes to make. Now, that was just on the process of making music. Putting it out there, oof, buddy. Again, I'm I'm comparing myself to Frank Ocean, who, from my understanding, barely posted. So it seemed that if I were to post anything beyond just saying, oh, this music is out there, then I would be like panhandling on the digital streets of the internet. It would be a turnoff to people. People would see me as a beggar, like, please, sir, please listen to my music. Please click my SoundCloud link, sir. It felt embarrassing. I would be losing aura. I thought to myself, my greats never had to do this. Is it just that I don't deserve to have this music out there? And it's funny, this rule wouldn't apply if I was consistently posting and then I had an audience, because when I had an audience with Lavender, that song picked up track, I was like, oh buddy, let me post because the likes feel so good. Yes, please tell me how much you like me. Yes, yes. But then when the next project didn't do as well, I felt like more shit, and I would barely post and put myself out there, to the point where people who knew me never knew me as a rapper, because I would barely have that identity be present. It took two quotes that I heard that really changed my perspective on the entire thing. One from Virgil Abloh and one from Gunner. The Virgil Abloh quote was him praising social media. Why? Because in his perspective, it's a win-win game. If you post something and it does well and it has a positive reception, then you get to showcase your work. And if you post something and the idea flops, no one's going to remember it.
Wait, I can just put work out, and if it's good, it works. If it's bad, no one notices, and I can just get better at it.
And in my head, I thought, oh, well, if people are only going to have time to remember the good stuff and not the bad, then why not put myself out there? And then to bring that point home, I was watching a YouTube video made by Gunner, this musician based also in the GTA. Shout out Gunner. I went to your show. It was very good. He said that the fear that you get from posting is because you want to maintain this legacy that you have. But the funny thing is that legacy does not exist yet. The Virgil Abloh moment and the Gunner moment, it made me realize I wasn't really protecting quality. I was protecting my ego, because I was putting myself out there, and when I wasn't getting the immediate response that I wanted to, I would just think to myself, what's the point? But even then, some of the fears were based on false presumptions, because simply put, we are not playing the same game. Hi. Quick pause from the video. If you've been enjoying what you're watching so far, please do consider liking, subscribing with the notifications on, and leaving a comment. It does really help in the algorithm. Thank you so much. Now back to the video. Obviously, my story isn't going to be the same as Frank Ocean's. Watch the Throne is already out. That door isn't shut because that door was never opened. That was his unique experience on how he made it. So I can't be looking at an artist, whether it be him or anyone else, as a play-by-play on how to get this career started. Even then, there's also bigger things that aren't the same. Me and Frank Ocean came up at different times. We're both using the internet, but it's not the same internet. Frank Ocean came up in the blog era. And if you don't know what the blog era is, the blog era is a soft term used to describe the first ever group of musicians who would blow up off of blogs like Dat Biff, Two Dope Boys, World Star. It was how a lot of people were independently releasing music at the time, and that's how we got some of our faves, like, again, Frank Ocean, All of Odd Future, Mac Miller, Gambino. Back then, the market was not saturated at all. No one knew how to use the internet, and so if you were a musician trying to put yourself out there, it would have way more of an immense impact because, one, it was so new and unconventional, and two, there was less people doing it, so you had more of a chance to be received if you put yourself out there. If you want to talk about this in a business sense, I'll use that business degree that I worked for right here. There's this thing called the innovation adoption curve that basically tracks when an innovation comes up, who are the innovators who use it, the early majority that adopt it, the late majority, and then the laggards. So if you wanted to look at the blog era, they're the innovators of the scene. And then the SoundCloud era, where people were still blowing up like that was the early majority, where there was still so much space to develop as an artist using the internet. And I think that early majority probably ended during COVID, because nowadays it feels like everyone and their mom is trying to make a career off the internet, and it's more saturated than it's ever been. I, just off of me showing up when I did, am part of the laggards / late majority of person trying to develop career off the internet. Does that mean it's impossible? I don't think so. Why? Just simply off the virtue of there being people on the internet who are still making careers, especially musicians. I mean, look, half the underground sound came out 2 to 3 years ago with Osama Sun, Shay, Netspend. I'm not comparing my sound to them, but I'm just saying that, like, you can still make a career off of this music shit, but the playing field is different. And so if I have to do other things like make YouTube videos or post daily snippets of my song on social media, that's not because I'm any lesser of an artist than a Frank Ocean per se. It's just that this is what works in my time, and that's what works in his time. Scarcity works different when you already have demand, like a Frank Ocean. And also Frank can disappear because he's already arrived in the cultural zeitgeist and he's been able to cement his spot in the ecosystem, while I'm and other artists who are trying to come up are still cultivating ours. So what am I trying to get at with this and this entire video? Basically, I'm just trying to tell you to get. Remember how I said that Frank Ocean's career was seemingly perfect, where after his first mixtape, he got flown out to LA to work with Kanye and Jay-Z? Well, that's a really revisionist way of telling you the story. The full context is that Frank Ocean was already signed to Def Jam as a writer, and he went under a different name, Lonnie Bro, before he went on to perform as the artist Frank Ocean. Def Jam actually tried to sign Frank Ocean when they heard about him, not realizing, oh shit, we already have him. Why do I bring that up? Well, it's to dispel the myth that Frank Ocean seemingly came out the womb perfect. I did some research and I found that there's a whole catalog of Frank Ocean or Lonnie Bro music that is just unreleased and has been either by him or his label or a company he works with been scrubbed off the internet, maybe to preserve the identity of a Frank Ocean, to make people like my naive 15-year-old self think, oh my god, this guy is just seemingly perfect. Still, on Reddit forums, you can find the music, and off of just 5 minutes of digging, I was able to find a back catalog of I think 60 to 70 different songs. And when I found the drive link to all those songs and I listened to early songs that Frank Ocean had, it just blew my mind, because I was always thinking that this guy just had some divine talent, and because my discography isn't that tight, that I'll never be able to achieve a Frank Ocean level of quality of music and cultural relevance. But dude, there were 60 to 70 unreleased songs. The total number of songs I've released in the 5 years that I've been doing music is at like 30 or 40. So I gotta stop complaining, and I have to start going to the studio more and more to put in more reps. This video seemed so stupid to make when I finished writing the script, because the simple premise that I'm leaving people off with is just do the work. I think laziness plays a part in us finding the mysticism and the small discography of Frank Ocean so alluring, because we think to ourselves, oh my god, wait, you can have millions of dollars and have fans around the world by doing so little? What the heck? Why can't I do that? And when you try that and it doesn't work, you're like, okay, maybe it's just not cut out for me. But that's not the case. Frank Ocean, like any other artist or any other athlete, put in hours and reps into his music, and now he's yielding the reward. And the music that's publicly out there is a highlight reel of Frank Ocean's music. And I am going to stop comparing myself to his highlight reel. I do this really toxic thing sometimes where I map out how old my favorite artists were when they reached pivotal moments of success, and I would map out my own career timeline, and if I'm lagging behind, I'd get super anxious. But I'm gonna try my best to stop doing that, because it's not productive, and I know that I'm probably not the only person who's feeling like this. So if you are, stop doing it, please. It's not good for either of us. You don't need perfection, you need volume. Go put those reps in, baby. This has been Ali. Thank you so much. Please like and subscribe. There's going to be a video out next week. Take care.